Personnel Committee, thanks. This meeting is televised live on Channel 13-2. The video is also posted on the city website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Anyone wishing to view a copy of the agenda and supporting materials will find it on the city website. If you are in our audience tonight, you may access the agenda from any mobile device, and copies of the printed agenda are available in the wall pockets just as you enter the meeting room. To receive electronic copies of future agenda packets, please go to the home page and subscribe to the city meetings email list. The public and other city councilors will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda item under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. I will not recognize an individual a second time until everyone who wishes to speak has had a chance. Once a motion has been made and seconded, only the committee members and the public may speak. Councilors in attendance will have an opportunity at the next council meeting. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room and identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. Written comments from the public will be accepted at the city clerk's office until Tuesday at 1 p.m. Call to order this meeting and go to our agenda. The first item on the agenda is the acceptance of a hazardous materials emergency preparedness grant in the fire departments.
Mr. Chair. Jeff Chickering, Deputy Chief. I'd like to, that the committee forward the Finance Organization Personnel Committee recommend that the City Council authorize the city manager to do all things necessary to apply for, execute, expend, and accept the terms of the grant agreement for the hazardous materials preparedness grant application as presented in the amount of $26,934 for the purchase and installation of conferencing equipment and the hazmat plan updates.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, get a motion? Wait, one more. Other councilors who may have a question? Members of the public? In that case, a motion, please.
Move to recommend that the City Council authorize the city manager to do all things necessary to apply for, execute, accept, and expend the terms of the grant agreement for the hazardous materials preparedness grant application as presented in the amount of $26,934 for the purchase and installation of conferencing equipment and hazmat plan updates.
And I second.
Any further discussion by members of the committee? Seeing any? All in favor? No one opposed. It's unanimous. Thanks, Deputy.
Thank you very much.
Next item is Public Works Department for another grant.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, committee members, Cor Plumquist, Assistant City Manager, Public Works Director. This evening, the department has in front of you a water resource protection grant. You have accepted these before. This is for work that we perform up at our Babbage and Woodard reservoirs that are located in the town of Roxbury. This project continues our fencing around particularly Babbage, which is our lower reservoir where we in the past have had issues with unauthorized folks going in, having campfires, ATVs, those sort of activities in on the dam area and along the edge of the reservoir area. This particular grant is for $12,000 and will fund approximately 190 linear feet of fencing and a 16-foot wide gate. There is some additional cost, in-house staff time. We need to do some clearing in the area of which the fencing will be installed, and we'll be doing that with in-house forces. That has a value of approximately $3,000. So we are recommending that the council authorize the manager to accept and execute the grant.
Thank you. Questions from members of the committee? Other city councilors present? And anybody from the public? Seeing none, it's your turn.
Move to recommend the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to accept and execute a local source water protection grant from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, NHDES, in the amount of $12,000 for the installation of security fencing at Babbage Reservoir.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion by members of the committee? Seeing none, all in favor? Anyone opposed? It's unanimous.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So this item is a renewable energy project.
Duncan Watson, Assistant Public Works Director, here tonight to talk a little bit about a couple of parcels that have been identified as potential for solar development. One of them is the northwest corner of Monadnock View Cemetery, and the other one being Rose Lane. The property at Monadnock View right now is zoned as a conservation easement parcel, so in order for an energy project to be developed there would be a requirement by the developer to seek a variance, and as to whether or not they would decide to seek that variance and whether or not it would be a variance they could achieve to get is unknown at this point. But the Rose Lane property is zoned in the commercial industrial zone, and right now it currently is basically where the old wastewater treatment plant is. There's a lined landfill there where the old biosolids that were disposed on site is located, and it's all been closed up and capped according to New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services specifications. But we would be able to locate a solar array on that parcel and making it a productive use of otherwise unproductive land. Each one of these solar arrays would be around a quarter of a megawatt in size, should they be fully developed. And so we're asking tonight to seek permission for the city manager to do all things necessary to negotiate and execute a lease agreement. This is not a power purchase agreement. This is just a straight land lease, and then the developer would be working either with a direct wheel of the power on the Monadnock View Cemetery property. There's some interest from Cedar Crest, which is located adjacent to the parcel. And on the Rose Lane property, it would be put onto under the grid, meant to benefit low and moderate income families with lower electricity cost.
Thanks. Questions? Tina?
Yes. In reference to providing electricity for low or moderate to low income families, is that like it's a separate company from Eversource? Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. So the power the generated power would be metered in some fashion, and there would be a community service organization that would be aggregating the power and then offering that lower cost power to some of their own customers, I guess, the people who rent or have properties from those community service organizations.
And I noticed in the notes that it said the city would receive a nominal fee to lease the land. Would it be like a year or 5 years? And what is nominal?
Well, I mean, I don't know what the exact rate would be at this point. It would be subject to negotiate for the city manager, but it would not be anything that is going to make any big difference to the city's budget. It would just be a project that would be beneficial from an energy generation standpoint,
Sure.
and otherwise land that we really can't use for any other purpose. But it would be of an incredibly small amount, and it would be on a yearly basis. The lease would be based on a yearly basis. And the lease term would probably be around 20 years because that's how long it takes for an energy project to fully realize its full benefit.
And one last question is, did they approach the city, or are we actually seeking, being proactive and seeking for solar panel companies to lease land?
Well, it's a little bit of both. We had originally put out these parcels in an original round, and at the time of the original round, that was when the 350 Marlborough Street project came to the forefront as being, the most effective investment of the funds necessary. But that's also a power purchase agreement. The second one that we considered was also a solar array down at the airport, which is what is being constructed right now to supply the electricity needs for the wastewater treatment plant. And this is just now a continuation of, a slow but steady development of parcels that make economic sense. We have other parcels that could be available, but right now, the economics of the project don't make it feasible to develop those energy sources until we get better renewable energy credits in the state of New Hampshire or better meter rates from those energy development projects. It's a fairly complex world once you get into it, but these two parcels seem to make sense for what they're looking to do.
It's a great idea, and I love the idea of the being able to provide a competitive price to low to moderate income families. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Director. Just a clarifying question. It's on the cemetery side. It's in the back left, right? Is it directly adjacent to Cedar Crest?
Yeah, it's the landlocked portion. If there's a maintenance building back, towards the edge where there's no burial plots there. It's in the area nearby where community gardens are located.
Yep. Are there any concerns around, since it's going to be essentially a ground-based array, of glare to any of the neighbors? Because I know we've got the apartments there, we've got Cedar Crest there. Or are there enough tree coverage in between the properties to negate any of those effects?
Right, great question. We actually looked at, with Revision Energy, we looked at the site, and there is currently a row of arborvitaes that shield what would be the area, that if they were able to get a variance to locate a solar array there, they would be properly shielded from the people that live there.
Thank you.
City councilors who may wish to speak to this? Any members of the public that wish to speak to it? In that case, motion, please.
Move to recommend that the city council authorize the city manager to do all things necessary to negotiate and execute a lease agreement with Revision Energy for a solar array installation at Monadnock View Cemetery and Rose Lane.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? No one opposed, so it's unanimous. Thank you
sir.
very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Airport Director.
Good evening, everyone. Dave Hickling, Airport Director. Well, I'm back once again with a request to lease land at the airport for hangar development. This time, Monadnock Aviation, who's the fixed base operator at the airport, provides a vital service there. They provide all the fueling and ground handling of all the aircraft coming in. What they are proposing is that they would like to build a larger hangar, approximately 90 foot by 90 foot. This would be a heated hangar capable of hangaring larger aircraft like corporate jets. We currently do not have facilities to be able to do that now. So if we have transit aircraft coming in on business and the weather's bad, we do not have a place that we can put those type of aircraft inside overnight, and a lot of them like to do that. So a little bit about Monadnock Aviation. They've been serving the airport for quite a long time, doing a phenomenal job, very vital business that they provide. They, of course, struggled during the pandemic, but they're coming back, and it makes me feel very happy that they're confident enough in coming back in the business here to be looking to invest to build this hangar at the airport. So this is something it would definitely benefit the community, the airport, and the city with additional revenue. So we're looking for this body to recommend that the city manager be able to negotiate and execute this lease.
Questions from members?
I just want to say I'm really happy to see this, because 4 or 5 years ago, we created an economic development plan, and the fruits, or the seeds are coming to fruition. And it's also good news that an existing company, as you said, is expanding, especially after suffering for a couple of years. So
It is.
kudos to this.
Absolutely.
City councilors in the public? Members of the public? All right, one more question.
Okay.
Where's it going to be?
There's actually 2 sites that she's considering. One would be right between the terminal and the maintenance building, and the other is over on the other side where all the other corporate hangars, the larger hangars are. It'd be right in the middle of those.
And What's the timing here? You're looking for
I think all of the people looking to develop hangars know that the costs are high now. What they would like to do is get the leases negotiated and be ready when the costs come down, that they can start moving on them.
Okay, thank you. So a motion, please.
The Finance, Organization, and Personnel Committee moves to recommend that the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to negotiate and execute a lease agreement with Monadnock Aviation for land to develop a new hangar.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? No one opposed, so good luck.
Thank you very much.
All right, the next item on the agenda is a letter from Councilors Williams, Workman, and Lake, encouraging the city to develop a homelessness strategy through programs that focus on reducing harms associated with homelessness. So I think how we'll start this off is I'd ask the folks that are authors of that letter to the council if you'd take an opportunity to speak.
Good evening, everyone. I'll start by saying housing is a basic human need as outlined in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. In fact, it falls into the first category of physiological needs, the basic requirements for human survival, which include air, food, drink, shelter, clothing, warmth, and sleep. If these needs are not sufficiently met, it becomes increasingly difficult, if not impossible, to meet the other secondary needs. While the recent events involving issuance of no trespassing orders to the people living in the encampment area behind Hannaford's was the catalyst for drafting the letter, it certainly wasn't the only reason. The intention of the letter was to spark a deeper community conversation on ways we can treat our most vulnerable residents with compassion, dignity, and respect, while encouraging more out-of-the-box brainstorming on short-term and long-term sustainable solutions to better assist individuals struggling to obtain and maintain housing. It's important to note the listed action steps are recommendations or a starting point for the discussion and is not meant to be comprehensive. As a city, Keene has always been a compassionate community with various nonprofit agencies providing an array of services to the community members who are in need. It's imperative that we recognize there are barriers associated with connecting to these services, and there are ways we can do better overall. Homelessness is a complex issue and requires a multifaceted approach to combat it. We need to be realistic with our expectations. The fact of the matter is, regardless of our efforts, no matter how extraordinary, we will never completely eradicate homelessness. However, we can and we should be doing, what we can and should be doing is meeting people where they are to reduce the harms of homelessness, while ensuring there is a clear path to services with as few barriers to assistance as possible. When someone is in crisis, doing the bare minimum of even making a phone call using an automated system can be an overwhelming task. If you hit too many closed doors or obstacles, it can be paralyzing and stop someone from continuing to ask for help. In the field, social workers often state they will hold hope for individuals until they themselves can hold that hope. We as a community should strive to do the same. In closing, Councilors Lake, Williams, and myself acknowledge the hard work that the Greater Keene Homelessness Coalition, area nonprofit agencies, and the city has done and continues to do to bring attention to the issue of homelessness. Tonight, we are asking that the focus be on both short-term and long-term actionable steps with measurable outcomes. Working on both is not mutually exclusive, and while it makes strategic sense to focus on the long-term solutions, it appears we have lost sight of the short-term solutions that could be implemented, at least on a trial basis, to determine effectiveness.
Thank you, Councilor Workman. I'm going to spend some time talking about each of the proposals for action that were submitted as part of the letter that we sent. But before I do that, I'm going to start off with a story from my own life. I spent a chunk of 1995 and the better part of 1996 experiencing homelessness. I was 19 years old, out on my own for the first time. I was trying to start a life for myself in a small city that happened to have an intense housing shortage. At the time, I was basically just an ignorant kid. I still had the executive functioning skills of a teenager. I was managing difficulties related to social anxiety. I worked a few different jobs, but none of them paid me very well. So between these factors, finding a place to rent was very difficult for me, and I just kind of went from living situation to living situation. Whenever there was an opportunity to have a roof over my head, I would take it. I had a few roommate situations that lasted for a couple months at a time, but for the most part, I was either sleeping in a tent or in my pickup truck or on someone's couch, and at one point I had a mattress in a crawl space under a porch. And let me tell you, that's not a great way to live. You have to figure out every night where you're going to go to try to go get a good night's sleep. You can sleep in the truck and potentially wake up with a police officer tapping on your window and shining a flashlight in your face. Or you can go to a tent hidden deep in the woods where you're really hoping you won't get discovered. In either case, you put a lot of effort into hiding, which is extremely stressful. And it's hard to build a better life for yourself under those circumstances. It's hard to find a way to move to better housing or to be able to land a better job or to take classes at the community college or to date. And I know this because that was my situation. So you can see why I was so concerned when I heard about the people who had been asked to vacate their campsites behind the West Street Shopping Plaza. I'm glad that some of these people have been able to work with city staff and our local social services organizations to find shelter, and I appreciate the effort that has been done to make that happen. But I know that a lot of other people have chosen to go deeper into hiding. To me, I think this is a wake-up call, which reminds us that the system we have still isn't working for everyone, and some people are being left behind. And I think it's our responsibility to fix that. Today, Councilors Lake, Workman, and I are asking that the city engage in a process to build a strategy on housing and homelessness, and importantly, to take action on that strategy. We're introducing several of our own ideas for potential inclusion in that strategy, and I'm going to go over those now. The first of our proposals is to establish locations around the city to be designated as appropriate for camping. These locations should be provided with city-funded dumpster and latrine services to minimize the impact on campers on the local environment. We intentionally made this proposal quite broad, and it's a need that could be met in a number of ways. One of those options would be to open a new campground on public land where people could stay legally. Or maybe instead of a single campground that brings a lot of people to a single place, there could be primitive camping sites available by permit at different locations in the city's parks and public lands, so that no single part of town is asked to host a very large number of campers. As someone who enjoys camping sometimes, I might like to take advantage of that myself. You know, the city of Keene brands itself as an outdoorsy town, but I'm not sure how true that is if there's no place to camp. Our city's current camping ordinance says that the only place you can camp in Keene is at the Wheelock Park Campground. And as we all know, that campground closed a few years ago. So there is a lack of legal camping facilities in Keene, and I think that's one of the reasons we end up with a lot of illegal camping in our parks. I think this is a situation where the legalization and regulation of camping is a better approach than outlawing the practice. Let's admit that people are out there and that it would benefit us all if we recognize their needs for things like trash removal and a decent place to go to the bathroom. The second item that we've proposed is to establish a safe parking program entailing the designation of parking lots where people living in their vehicles would be allowed to park and sleep overnight in relative security. Safe parking programs, or I should say safer parking programs, are becoming a common practice in cities on the West Coast. People who are staying in their car often stay off the radar of social service organizations, but safer parking programs offer a way to bring those people into the fold. We can accomplish real harm reduction by bringing people who live in their cars to places where they can have access to a bathroom, which is critically important, and where they can sleep overnight in their car, knowing that there's going to be a certain amount of police presence in the area that will help to prevent them from becoming victims of crime. We think that this is a program that would be relatively uncomplicated to implement and would like to see a pilot project happen this summer. Our third proposal is that the city work with our social services partners to provide occupants of camping and parking areas with outreach support and pathways to more stable housing opportunities. I think this is a straightforward recommendation. We aren't asking for a free-for-all on camping and parking here, but rather we're asking that we use these needs as opportunities to get people out of hiding and bring them to a place where they can get the support they need to get themselves to a better situation. Our next proposal is to review building code and zoning ordinances to make room for lower cost housing solutions, such as tiny homes, cottage communities, and conversion of existing spaces into accessory dwelling units. The issues of housing and homelessness are deeply connected, and there is a direct relationship between the cost of housing and the amount of homelessness in a community. I don't need to tell you that the cost of housing has been going up a lot lately. We need to figure out what we can do to innovate in this area and bring down the cost of housing. This also relates to our next recommendation, which is work to expedite projects that bring expanded housing capacity in the city with a balance focused on both subsidized and market rate housing. Housing is a supply and demand problem, and our problem in the city is that we have a lot of demand and limited supply. If we want to get the cost of housing under control, we're going to have to figure out how to build more of it. It's that simple. Our last suggestion is one that's been around for a while, and that is that we find a long-term solution for the lack of public bathrooms downtown. I know that there are plans in the works to build a transportation center downtown that would include public bathrooms, but that possibility is still a few years out, and I would like to find a solution in the meantime. I understand that the public bathroom issue is a very tough nut to crack, owing to the need to provide supervision and cleaning services, but we shouldn't give up. The city of Portland, Oregon, has developed a special type of outdoor bathroom to support people who are experiencing homelessness. These facilities are mostly self-cleaning and very difficult to vandalize. We would like to see the city review and experiment with this idea, perhaps placing one of these bathroom facilities along the rail trail, where it can also be used by people who are biking through. So this is our list of ideas, and we hope we can find a way to incorporate them into a broad city strategy for housing and homelessness. And I'm going to turn it over to Councillor Lake now to talk about what we would like to see as the next steps in this process.
Yep. So now on to how we actually accomplish what we've outlined here. Because of course we need a path forward for how we're going to carry these things out. So we believe the best course of action will be to have this set of objectives be referred to one of our city boards or commissions, such as the Human Rights Committee, to be further investigated and discussed, and to have that board or commission report back to the city council specific recommendations on how to carry them out. The idea is to mimic the strategies employed by committees such as the Energy and Climate Committee, where a list of specific objectives was provided to that committee by the city to explore, act on, and provide recommendations where they see fit. So for example, on our recommendations, designated outdoor camping, where would it go? What's needed for resources such as trash removal? How does this integrate with service outreach? Or on the building code, what needs to change to allow for more affordable housing options? So on and so forth down the list. And with regards to ongoing efforts, what we're attempting to accomplish with this list of suggestions is not in direct conflict with the existing objectives of the Greater Keene Homeless Coalition, which has an intended aim of bringing together ideas focused on ending homelessness. Instead, these objectives are complementary by striving to reduce the harms associated with homelessness. These are two different goals, but of course have overlapping strategies, such as trying to increase affordable housing options. I want to be clear that it's not our view that the city isn't providing services and seeking out additional solutions to the issue of homelessness, but rather that there are additional opportunities, as we've outlined, for us to reduce the impact to the affected individuals and the community at large. It is our hope that a committee such as the Human Rights Committee can work alongside the Homeless Coalition to move our objectives forward. With that, Mr. Chair, we'd be interested in both hearing from the committee and from the members here tonight from the public. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So what we'd like to do is make sure we get lots of information out and available to everyone who has expressed an interest in looking towards a solution. So we've got several folks on city staff and some of our partners dealing with these issues that are here tonight, and I'm going to take an opportunity for them to let you know what we're at the current time, and probably will mend that in with some of the information that's coming up every single day from numbers of people. So I'm going to start off with the city manager to cover those issues or those matters that the city addresses and how they approach in each and every time someone needs services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, councilors. So I want to start with my opinion. My opinion, it's always dangerous to give your opinion, but I'm going to in this case. My opinion is our welfare laws and the overall structure of welfare in the state of New Hampshire is broken. I believe that's the fundamental issue right here. The shelter model and honestly the proposed camping model does not get to the root of the problem. It forces people to leave their own community because their community lacks the support they need. Instead, they are forced to congregate in group living quarters in the few communities that have shelters and social services. Then, because those communities have shelters and services, it becomes more cost-effective to grow those in towns and cities that have those services, shifting a larger burden to a handful of communities, instead of finding solutions in every community across our state. To address the issues, we need to get upstream of the problem. How do we do that? Welfare reform at the state level. Each community in the state should be providing transitional housing in their own community and mobile support services. Welfare directors should be focused on strategies to prevent homelessness, and they should be working to keep people in their homes through rental or mortgage assistance, or even just helping residents access available state programs that will provide that assistance. Right now, there is no incentive for communities to do any of this, because right now, if someone becomes homeless, the welfare director in the community picks up the phone and calls all of the shelters in the state until they find an open bed. Then that community pays to transport them to that shelter. Other barriers include communities with very limited hours to apply for assistance and complicated applications. If you are in need of emergency assistance but your town's welfare office isn't open, chances are you are going to go somewhere like Keene that has office hours and is accessible. In the 4.5 years that I've been here, we have seen this happen. 100 Nights has transitioned from a shelter that was open 100 nights during the coldest time of the year to a year-round shelter starting in 2017. And now they are building a new shelter on Water Street, which almost doubles what their original capacity before the recently added bus and hotel rooms. We heard today at the Homeless Coalition meeting that those self-reporting that they are from Keene in our shelter system right now is 60%. 25% are not even from Cheshire County. This is good information to inform the conversation, but we know that likely Keene residents are even less than 60% because people often think they have to say they are from Keene to get services from Keene, which is not the case. Regardless of residency, the way the state law is structured, if you are eligible to receive assistance from the city and the shelters, you receive it regardless of your residency status. We are a caring community who tries to do the right thing, but I use this analogy today. It feels like bailing water out of a boat that is full of holes, because no matter what we do as a community or how much additional capacity we create, unless the state's welfare structure is addressed, it will never be enough. Communities around us without shelters and programs or large cities who struggle with these same issues will look to us if there's an open bed, and our numbers will continue to grow. Today, we heard at the coalition meeting that more towns in our county are in need of Southwest Community Service shelter services as compared to last year. Here is another telling statistic. The estimated rate of homeless for New Hampshire is 12.3 people per 10,000 population, meaning on average, Keene should have about 31 people experiencing homeless. Right now, 100 Nights has 64 clients between the shelter, their bus, and people they have put up in hotels using COVID funding. SCS has 45. There are between 15 and 20 people we believe that are living either on the streets or in the woods, and MCVP has 7. That is 136 homeless clients. I want to emphasize one other thing before talking about what we've been doing. If someone is homeless and comes to the city, regardless of availability in shelters, we will house them. What we saw with the encampment behind Hannaford, after weeks of outreach and a coordinated approach with social services that did go to where they are and did outreach to their location, that outreach began on January 31st and lasted right up till March 14th. What we saw was only a couple of people actually agreed to go into a shelter. A couple more sought out rehab, and the rest were not interested in the services that we provide. Even though the barriers to entry to get into our shelters are very low, people have different life stories and circumstances, and our team takes the time to learn about those stories and circumstances and provide services that are right for them. But the work that we do is focused on bringing people in from the streets or the woods, not creating more opportunities for them to live in the woods. So what have we been doing at the city? Both the mayor and I have been involved in the Governor's Council on Housing Stability. The mayor has served as a member of the commission, and the last year I co-chaired a group focused on regional coordination. There is a strategic plan that has come out with both short-term and long-term action steps that talks about housing as well as a comprehensive plan on homelessness. This plan mentions the uneven and inconsistent responses across all towns, and as a result, the participating communities shouldering a disproportionate amount of financial responsibility. It includes recommendations, which I personally don't think go far enough, probably because tackling welfare changes in New Hampshire would be tough. But it does include conducting a formal data-driven assessment of the current welfare model to propose solutions to both the financial and the administrative structure based on that assessment. The plan also talks about equipping smaller towns for responses, so issues don't overwhelm the larger cities, and providing resources for short and medium-term financial assistance for rent and utilities for people in economic crisis. This is a good preventative measure that all communities should be focused on in their welfare department. We need to get upstream of this issue. This year, the Greater Keene Homeless Coalition that I've been actively involved in has also been participating in a service mapping project, mapping services for a variety of things to improve practices in promoting housing stability, homeless prevention, and cross-agency communication, identifying program and policy overlaps and gaps to inform the next steps, align resources to maximize the benefit to the community residents who are facing homelessness. The state hopes to create a model that can be duplicated in other parts of the state, and we have already implemented some of those recommendations in the first draft. For instance, about a year ago, within the last year, we instituted client meetings with Human Services and the 2 homeless shelters to discuss individual cases. This is a much better person-centered approach. We are now implementing the same type of meeting for street homeless. We are part of the state's coordinated entry system and would like to be part of the state's homeless management information system to better track assessments and referrals. We need to personalize this issue. We need to follow the person. In addition, Natalie Darcy, our Human Services Director, is in the process of setting up a meeting with the Cheshire County Welfare Directors to discuss homelessness and city or town responsibilities. Craig Henderson of SCS is also going to be part of this meeting to speak on billing and town responsibilities. Natalie would like this group to eventually come up with a uniform application for area directors, as well as reminding them of their responsibilities. As I mentioned earlier, some towns only take appointments 1 day a week for a few hours. The state's Housing Stability Strategic Plan has a goal of increasing housing units in the state of New Hampshire by 13,500 by the year 2024, and there are action steps in the plan around that. We have taken this goal and applied it to Cheshire County and to Keene to understand what our share of that goal might look like. One thing that I am excited about is the work being undertaken by all state regional planning commissions to inventory housing types and affordability across the state. This information will be very helpful in forming state and local strategies. Many communities have very restrictive zoning regulations that prohibit certain housing developments. Keene has gone through an extensive update of our zoning regulations and has made changes to allow for more densification. There's definitely more work to be done, and Chair Bosley agrees with that and is planning to continue the review of our zoning code to continue to do the good work that they have started in that area. In regards to assessing dwelling units, they are a great way to add more housing and make home ownership more affordable. Yet we haven't seen many people take advantage of this in the state. So we need to examine what are the barriers? Why aren't more people doing this? Hopefully I have highlighted that many, but not all, of the ideas being proposed in the letter are being implemented and have been done. We have taken stock of going through the letter, we have taken stock of our housing and homeless strategies, made several improvements, and will continue to do so. We have implemented and participated in the state's strategic plan on housing stability and comprehensive statewide plan on homelessness, and we've implemented many of the improvements as a result of these conversations. We have a very engaged group of partners in the Homeless Coalition who are really leaders in this region. They are extremely knowledgeable. They have had great ideas at these meetings, and there's been a lot of cross-agency cooperation and brainstorming. And we do partner with our social service partners to provide outreach support directly where people are and pathways to stable housing opportunities. And also, we will provide a housing option to anyone homeless and currently camping. We are in the process of streamlining our permit process, but we are not there yet, and we have more work to do for sure. And lastly, related to public bathrooms, Councilor Williams mentioned we are talking about public bathrooms in our in our capital plan, and we have looked at the Portland Loo in the past as an interim option, and we've examined that, so it's easy enough to bring that back forward again. So basically, I wanted to say that I would like to continue to implement the strategic plans we already have in place, both at the state and at our local level, and continue the good work of our partners at the Homeless Coalition. But what I'm really looking for is for someone to take on welfare reform at the state level so we can get to the root of these problems.
Thank you. Don't we have a state senator that could do that?
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
All right, I think it would be an opportune time to hear from our Human Services Director, so that everybody can get a better understanding of the way she's able to provide to the clients that come and see her and get referred to her. They don't, if folks don't know where to go or how to go, there's a lot of folks out there that are helping people find their way to seek the services from the city and others. But let's talk about the city right now. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Natalie Darcy. I'm the Human Services Manager for the City of Keene. And I wanted you to know that our office is passionate in our efforts to assist the homeless community and committed to work to assure that everybody who wants to come in from the cold is able to do so. Sometimes it feels like a two-edged sword, as we must determine the town that the person is from. This does not mean that the individual will not be assisted, but assures that the correct town can take accountability for the residents. And also, I do have a responsibility to the taxpayers of Keene to assure that tax money is being spent appropriately. It is our hope that Human Services could be instrumental in keeping people in their homes. This is the foremost so that they do not become homeless. It is important that citizens know that Human Services can assist. We're here Monday through Friday every day, and there are other programs in the area that'll happily assist and help folks to keep individuals housed. Since the pandemic rental moratorium ended, we are seeing many families evicted for reasons other than rent, unfortunately. This, along with a 0.6% rental vacancy, has posed the issue to a greater extent. It is imperative to have a great working relationship with area resources to keep people in from the cold, which is why we are establishing this mapping program and doing our homeless coalition. Human Services has not always had an overabundance of homeless individuals. In fact, in the last 13 years that I have been a part of the Human Services office, the first 10, we never had to put anybody in a hotel space. SES was able to take most of our homeless community, and that's when we had In from the Cold as well over the St. James Thrift Store. The last 3 years, we've seen an increase in requesting shelter hotel assistance, which we do, and we have assisted many individuals. We've had a big jump in need over the last 2 years, in essence, a 100% increase in requests per year. So the issue is real. Today, we see homeless in our office on a daily basis. Human Services does not have staffing capacities, however, to go out and do outreach in the field, which is why we are glad we have our partners at Southwestern and 100 Nights. So what about our relationships with our shelters in the city? With 100 Nights, this winter, 100 Nights has been assisting over about 70 individuals per night. Regular capacity is 28. Today's number was 62. Human Services requests to meet with shelter guests to determine the town, city that individuals reside. We can at least begin the process of case management at this point. Human Services will then assist in the emergency and make the proper referrals where necessary. and we have a good group in our coalition ready and willing to assist all who need help. I feel Human Services has a great relationship with 100 Nights staff. I do know it's been more difficult. They've been extremely busy with the amount of folks at their shelter and staff shortages. While housing many homeless families in area hotels, 13 rooms from 100 Nights, there is no plan, unfortunately, to house the individuals when the April 30th arrives. We have received at least 7 applications from the hotels, and we are working with these individuals to try to get them case management and housing before that April 30th deadline. We don't want to see anybody have to go out into the cold and have no place to go, and in fact, Human Services will not allow that to happen. We take each case very seriously, and if necessary, hotels will be used for families and individuals. If we're not receiving regular updates such as bed lists, we can't know who the individuals are who need the assistance. This is why it's imperative that we see these folks, determine where they're from, and contact the correct town to see if they have the resources within their own communities to take care of their homeless population. With Southwestern, we have a great relationship with Southwestern Community Services as well. They have worked with us. They have had open beds throughout the winter, and we have been able to house many individuals because of that relationship. 100 Nights, I will say, has that as well. We do speak daily with shelter staff regarding open beds, and Southwestern has made accommodations when requested and needed whenever possible to do so. All right, so shelter capacity in per town. So, excuse me, a little dry. I wanted to talk about how many shelter guests are around from different cities and towns. For instance, I have a few from these past bed lists. From Jaffrey, 3, and this is a combination of both shelters. Bedford, 1, Hillsborough, 6, Winchester, 8, Brattleboro, 2, Ringe, 6, Claremont, 6, Plymouth, 1, Richmond, 2, Florida, 1, Swansea, 5, Manchester, 2, another Florida, 1, New York City, Troy, Fitzwilliam, North Carolina, Georgia, Roxbury, Vermont, and Newport, and New Ipswich. Overall, 55 individuals out of town. 48 individuals are Keene. 48% of the residents as listed by shelter staff. We have not met with each and every person in each shelter. As I receive and go through actual applications, the interview and investigation that many who say they are Keene are actually from another town. Keene is the hub with services, and naturally the individual wants to be identified as a Keene resident, as Elizabeth has explained. Excuse me. Overall, we are seeing 60 to 75% of all shelter guests from another community. Towns are not taking their responsibility under RSA 165 for their homeless population. Many state that since they sleep in Keene, they are Keene. For Human Services purposes, however, shelter is transitory housing and is not counted as residency. Again, I will say that we will not turn anyone away who comes to our office for assistance. The housing comes first before all things. As Elizabeth said, many welfare offices are not open regular hours and unavailable to the homeless population. We are working with clients who are out of town to get applications to the appropriate town and have started that process already. Clients who are made to move to a new community, such if they're living in Swansea, they have children that go to school in Swansea. Why should their children have to change simply because they're going to a shelter in Keene? Then they're leaving their friends as well. Better find resources in your respective town, not to create new shelter space. Now, the mapping project work between Human Services and shelters, mental health organizations, and there's a whole host and variety of organizations in the Homeless Coalition. We meet, we have meetings. We do have biweekly meetings as well between the shelters and ourselves. We do have daily interaction with Southwestern Community Services and at times with 100 Nights staff. This allows the area resources to reach out to individuals in need. The encampments, we worked with individuals who need to be sheltered, and we did make that outreach. We had only a few that would come by to seek out services. We did give them cards directing people to our office for assistance. Housing developments. As we all know, getting subsidized housing is great for the community. However, housing developments are not always the answer when we're talking about the homeless population. Adding subsidized affordable housing will help a great deal of families. The homeless are oftentimes facing challenges to qualify for such housing. Background checks, criminal records often leave families locked out of these developments, as well as poor landlord references and credit reporting. Most individuals who come to our office do not have the resources to pay their rent in a timely manner. So why should they be locked out because they end up with a poor landlord reference or poor credit report? In addition, many housing developments have a policy: if you are late 3 times during the year on rent payments, you'll be evicted. This leaves the family homeless. In addition, clients are put on a wait list that can last 3+ years before being housed. Purging of lists also deletes the people who need the housing the most. Purging comes from mailing clients a letter saying if they're still interested in obtaining housing, which many homeless do not have an address to send mail. So what are the next steps? Continue the mapping process with the shelters, mental health, and healthcare providers. Using HMIS, the Homeless Management System, would be a helpful tool for our office in identifying the individuals who need the assistance and work with our mapping team to get people housed. Renew and start new MOUs, Memorandums of Understanding, with Southwestern Community Services and 100 Nights. Continue to meet with all individuals to assess, assist, and refer to appropriate agencies. Meet with Cheshire County welfare directors to discuss homeless strategies. Now, we do meet as a group for the New Hampshire Local Welfare Association, and we have had trainings on homelessness in this last year and a half, so that everybody is aware of these situations. We want to try to standardize the general assistance application with area towns, and we're going to add SCS and 100 Nights to the conversation in reference to homelessness and the RSA 165. My goal is to meet with welfare directors from Cheshire County monthly. It is our goal, the Human Services, and we have asked 100 Nights and Southwestern to send their clients to the city so we can assess each individual and their needs. We will assist in completing and sending applications to the appropriate towns for billing so that Keene is not on the hook for everybody in Keene. Promote homeless prevention and housing stability. We want to identify gaps in the process so no one should fall through the cracks. So in conclusion, our office, we feel, has a strong relationship with our area shelters and is committed to seeing that nobody has to live outside. We look forward to continuing to build strong relationships in the community and area services so that homeless will get the best possible care. Human Services continues to work with homeless individuals, and we will place in a hotel, as I said, as necessary. As fiscal year to date, the city has spent an additional $34,000 on hotel rooms, accommodations, and this does not including the funding the shelters currently receive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I guess I'd like to hear next, we would like to hear next from our partners and our friends on this topic from Southwest Community Services, and I think the staff is the director and the program director, and even more.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Beth Daniels. I'm the CEO of Southwestern Community Services. Thank you for your words tonight and everything that you were kind of laying out there, and I think in a really thoughtful and mindful way. The way that we at Southwestern have approached the issues of homelessness and housing have been on the idea of it being on a spectrum where someone falls in their experience with homelessness. It could be on the streets, unsheltered. It could be that they're on the brink of homelessness because they owe back due rent. Just kind of the entire process that someone can go through. And we do try to create resources across that spectrum, whether it be street outreach. We have been able to, in the past year, pay out about $9.8 million to prevent homelessness. That's through the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. We do have several family shelters, single men's shelters, excuse me. We also have, what we call permanent housing for our chronically homeless. We have 5 buildings dedicated to that. We've done extensive housing development. Keith has done extensive housing development for both seniors and family housing. So we do understand there are different needs based on different experiences and kind of meeting people where they're at. Having said that, when I think about the idea of those who are not currently sheltered, I think what I hear you saying is, yes, there are many services available, there are many needs being met, and there are also needs that are not being met. And I think that that is where the conversation, you really want to focus that conversation. So I appreciate that. From a standpoint of implementing these types of things, one of the things that comes to mind for me is if we're trying to create something like this, so something to think about in the development if it goes to committee, in the process of trying to create these types of sites, it will be a challenge to figure out how much structure you want to bring to it, how many, what will there be any rules? Will there be any oversight? Will there be any patrolling or staffing? Because the very group that you're trying to provide the service for, those types of controls may deter them from utilizing the space. So there's some nuances, I think, and I think bringing it to a committee is a really great way to move it forward. So it's a complicated situation. Southwestern's trying to do their part, but we understand that it's a bigger conversation as well. It's been a long time since I've been in a room with this many people in 2 years. So I apologize for my shakiness. And this is Craig Henderson. He's the director of our housing stabilization programs. And again, Keith, who's helped us with we have about 400 units of housing. In addition to, right now, we have not only our regular 4 homeless shelters, but we also opened 3 temporary decompression sites during COVID that we've kept open, and we hope to keep open until our friends at 100 Nights have their shelter built and ready to go. So it's tough. I think we can all be part of the solution, but it's going to be a challenging conversation, and I think implementing it has a little bit more nuance to it than it may appear on the surface. So.
Hi, Craig from Southwestern Community Services. Thank you. Actually, thank everybody for being here. You had mentioned having a talk, a place to start a deeper conversation, right? And that's why we're here. We may not agree on the nuances and what gets agreed upon. I think for Southwestern's perspective that we're both a leader and a follower, in that we are going to follow the community and we're going to figure out what the community is asking for, and then we will lead the way as far as really driving that home and making it happen. So, our goal really is to help the community put forth whatever it decides that it wants to do. My concern, as both a taxpayer, I've been with Southwestern Community Services for 20 years now. I remember comically, I told my mom, I'm like, I'm going to be working for Southwestern, helping homeless people. And she said, I didn't know Keene had homeless people. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to the right place then. Very cool. We are seeing some pretty troubling trends, though. From the Monadnock United Way, the Cheshire County Emergency Housing Collaborative numbers, last year, so 2020, we served 290 people. That's MCVP, SCS, and 100 nights. 2021, we served 371 people. So the numbers that, people can think what they want of me, but these are actual numbers. These are the numbers of people, real people that we served. And the one thing that we have to figure out is that Elizabeth is right in that the welfare system is broken. If you build capacity in Keene, people will be sent to Keene. There is no getting around it. Other welfare departments just don't want to deal with it. If they know that Keene is the easy button, they will send their people to Keene. So we have to work throughout the whole state to make sure that resources are available where people, she said, further upstream, right? Further down, further upstream, where the problem happened, that they don't come into the homeless system to begin with. So I just want to say that we should be cautiously moving towards adding any sort of capacity because it will be filled. And the numbers consistently show 75% of the folks that we serve are from Cheshire County, right? 1 in 4 clients that we serve are not from this county, all right? But that still means 75% of these folks are ours. I know people in Swansea, they may say they're from Keene. If I move to Troy, I'm still a Keene native. I just feel connected to this city, right? But it's a county issue. The state is probably not going to change, so it would behoove us to set the trend as a county and make this happen. Because other people, other parts of the state will not, but we have an opportunity now to make it happen. So thank you, everybody. Thank you.
I'll certainly be brief. I just would like to give my thoughts on just a couple of issues relative to the experiencing of homelessness. One size doesn't fit all. This is a complex subject. I'm sure if everyone here had 3 words to say, many of them would say something very different. So it's complex. A regional approach. I've always been a proponent of, whether it be buying fire equipment or dealing with homelessness. We don't do anywhere near enough regional work together, and part of that is our tax structure. But again, at the same time, we're all people, and I think there's whatever answer there is, it's going to be multifaceted, and it's great to see a cross section of people here tonight and looking at this issue, because that's what it's going to take. And just lastly, and this is from my personal experience of developing real estate and housing throughout the 2-county area that we serve, it can be as much about a homeless problem as it is an affordability problem. If people who are in the business of providing housing get enough resources, they'll build it. We have extremely high housing costs here, and in other places we're sort of a victim partially of our success, but it doesn't match the wages that are being paid in this community at the same time. That's a tough problem, but that's also part of the issue that you have here. It's interesting. I'm working with a group of college students right now in a basic architecture class, sophomore class, and what the task that I came up for some students to look at is, and this was born out of some conversations with some realtors, is how can you create temporary housing out of existing structures like warehouse structures and in industry, manufacturing that might not maybe empty in the community. It's an incredibly timely exercise that we're going through, but it's what you have to do. You have to look at all options, think laterally, and be what we are, which is a community that cares. So I hate to say it's a tough hill to climb, but it certainly is. But it's amazingly evident here about the issue that people were not afraid of it. And quite frankly, that's what we see in a lot of the smaller communities here. They're afraid to be overwhelmed. We're hitting it head on. And I think with the folks we have working on this and the efforts that are going toward it, the 100-night shelter alone is a huge accomplishment for a community this size, and that took the community to get done. And I think that will help a lot. But it's also, we have to look at this as individuals' lifestyle choices. Various forms of mental illness that also contribute to this that sometimes go untreated, and it's a complex issue. But I'm pretty confident that if we continue on this trajectory, we'll find answers, and they're going to come from a variety of places. And I appreciate everyone's time who came out here tonight and the city's time to take advantage of it. Jeff, please.
I apologize. We talk a lot about mental health and substance use and some of the other contributing factors. We also do want to recognize and honor the fact that there are certain folks that really just like to live the nomadic lifestyle or be away from prying eyes. And whatever percentage of the overall unsheltered population they make up, I can't tell you, but I do know that that is a portion of the population that we have served in the past and will continue to serve. So again, there's as many people experiencing homelessness as there are reasons for it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. There's one more partner in this project that I'd like to hear from, and this Mindy. Mindy's here. I thought I saw Mindy come in. Could we hear from you and your current new project, as well as the amount of services you provided over the last year? Quick overview.
Mindy Cambiar, a Keene resident, director of 100 Nights since 2013. I don't even know how many years that is right now. Feels like it's been my whole life. And before that, 24 years at the Community Kitchen, by the way. I feel like I don't disagree with anything Elizabeth or Southwestern or Natalie has said tonight. I believe there does need to be a further conversation here, and I'm really so proud of you three for writing that letter. You have no idea. But I want to express that everybody's so calm, and I am not calm at all, because I have 40 people in a hotel who are not going to have a place to go on April 30th. And it just adds to the problem of the people who are out behind Hannaford's. And we have to do something. I know that you don't think a campground might be the right solution, but we have to discuss what is the right solution. There has to be some way to deal with people who are experiencing homelessness and have nowhere to go. What are you going to do when 20 small children are wandering down Main Street with no home? I mean, honestly, Tom, I'm going to put you on the carpet for a minute here. Tom came back from Portland, Oregon, where my daughter lives, and we ran into each other, and he said, "Oh my God, homelessness in Keene is just an annoyance. You should see it in Portland." It's like, I've seen it in Portland for years. I mean, you walk up and down any street, any highway, there are tents everywhere. There are broken down campers parked in every parking spot on every side street in the entire city. And Portland, the government in Portland does an amazing job of trying to deal with the issue. They work at it. They try to find places for people to live. I mean, there's all kinds of solutions out there. It's not just a campground. How about railroad cars? It really does come down to zoning and finding places to put these things. We had a guy at the coalition meeting today who was talking about he wanted to develop tiny house communities. It's like, where's there a piece of land? We've got to be able to figure out where to put things. We've just got to. The accessory dwelling unit idea is amazing, but most of the people who own their homes don't want an accessory dwelling unit with a homeless person in it. So how do we address that? How do we get people to believe that all of these people are human beings worthy of dignity and compassion? I'm sorry. Elizabeth, I totally believe in what you're saying and doing. I think you're a good person. But we have to do something. We have to have more conversations going forward. We just have to, because it's breaking my heart about all the people who are going to be homeless on April 30th. Sorry.
All right, thank you very much. So we'd certainly love to hear from other folks so that as we process information, hang on, sir. But by our protocol here, I'd like to hear from City Councilor first if she wishes to speak, and if not, going to open it to the public. Gladys?
There's a couple out there.
There's who else? Oh, yes, Raleigh's out there.
Thank you very much, Counselor. I appreciate you inviting me. I'm hearing two things. I'm hearing desperation, I'm hearing what's being done, and I'm hearing disconnect. And I think that our three counselors here have seen some of the disconnect, and they're trying to fill in the gaps. This is not criticizing anyone. There's a lot of wonderful things going on in Keene. I'm very proud of Keene. However, I know behind me there are people that are homeless. And they want to be here and they want to talk. So I won't take much time. I just want to thank you as a committee. I want to thank you three and everybody that has come out. I just want to continue to listen to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Raleigh, did you want to come up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Raleigh Ormerod, former Monadnock Court, and also a Keene City Councilor. I did hear some gaps in the needs in what we were currently doing, and I believe there are some certain things that can be addressed. So thank you for everyone who spoke in great detail about what is being done and what could be done. We do have some temporary crisis, and there's some things that we need to address with the immediate homeless problem. I have a little bit different perspective serving on the school board, where we already take kids from the whole area. And we don't try to keep them in their own towns for high school, okay? We take them in, but what works better in that system is we get tuition associated with them. So in terms of the state reform that we can look at, instead of setting up barriers for people coming here, there could be an approach where we could get the resources allocated to what we're doing. I know Keene has always been a leader in a number of things. We're so proud about our leadership in energy. We're so proud about our leadership in compassion and inclusiveness. Maybe there's a way that we can be proud of our leadership in homelessness. Thank you.
Let's go, Keene! Thank you, Counselor. So members of the public who would like to speak, you're welcome to come up to the microphone and identify yourself and where you reside. We'd like to focus on the topics that have been brought forward, and we'd like to be brief.
I will
so
definitely
that
be
we
brief.
can give everyone an
My name is
opportunity
Kevin
who'd like
Moreau.
to speak. Go
And I
ahead.
do believe that I've been around here everywhere, and I see it, and I will agree with everybody here. It's disgusting, and I get that. But they're out behind Hannaford's, they're out behind Walmart, they're everywhere. You guys could definitely put a dumpster out there for them. I mean, come on, you guys are getting taxes from those guys. You could at least put a dumpster out there for them. And it is bad. It's bad. And like us guys, we have to go pick that up because it's gross. You don't leave that behind. And I get that part. If you guys want to parade our homelessness and you want to do that for us, then why don't you guys put us down at the old drive-in by the police station? Put them down there. No compliment?
We're really
Well,
taking in.
Hey, we sit right by
Okay.
the police station, right?
So for the benefit of everybody, we're taking in your thoughts and your information so that whichever part of this gets parceled out to various committees or the group as a whole, we want to bring it in, and we're not going to try to answer every question this evening because we wouldn't have any effective answers. So more than happy to hear from you and your comments.
Well, I, for one, appreciate the commitment to this nation's great history of kicking the can down the road. Just like, even when that can is just a chasm the size of the Great Canyon. I really appreciate that. But this past month, my rent went up $600. I don't, a show of hands here, who here can appreciate a $600 rent increase or mortgage increase? Anyone here? Anyone here down for that? So this problem gets way worse before it gets any better. And if we do not have the type of solutions that these people are offering, this is going to get a lot worse, and you're going to get a lot more people a lot more angry than I am right now. So this is either we fix it now or it get worse. It's up to you guys.
Thank you.
Chairman, Councilman, I'd like to take a moment to talk about agency and responsibility and how problems aren't biodegradable. Now, I don't know anybody sitting in front of me in this room, and I am utterly clueless as to your political persuasions, which among you are Save the World Democrats or Let Them Die Republicans. And to be completely frank, I don't particularly care. What I do care about is helping you answer the question, whose problem is this? The typical liberal Enlightenment answer to this question is that the responsibility is with the individual, that the condition of homelessness is one's own fault, and the responsibility of change lies therein. What a wonderful string of words this is to a chairman engaged in the eternal politician's gambit. How do I most effectively make this someone else's problem? Why, it is the fault of the individual, so I have no need to arise from my chair and dirty my hands over the matter. This is a very convenient answer to the ideologue, but it is less convenient to the pragmatist. Partisan hand-waving of this kind does not make the problem go away. It merely thrusts it upon the less prepared, upon my friends and I who have joined me here in this room. I could describe to you the terror which occurs when the sudden need to use Narcan, when the only medical training you've ever received was taking the first aid merit badge in the scouting program when you were 14. It becomes somewhat of a difficult task to read the instructions on the side of those little tubes when someone is dying in front of you. I could describe to you how unprepared I was when the gentleman in front of me came up with curse words in his fists rather than moans and lamentations of a headache. Now, I've been doing this work for over a year, and at this point, I've never been mugged or anything of the sorts, as interesting of a headline that would be. I've somewhat developed something of a knack for breaking up fights and de-escalation, though I've never taken a day of relevant training before in my life. And I've taken the liberty to map out the locations of camps, shelters, and handle alleviating what I can for the large unhoused population here in Keene, whether that's sourcing food, hygiene products, medical supplies, or the logistics thereof. I'm ignorant as to how the council here feels about outsourcing the disposal of sharps and other biohazardous materials to a 20-year-old with gloves he found discarded outside a Home Depot. I won't give an ounce of credence to the classist drivel which, pretending to be concerns about neighborhood health, the who takes them in, who pays for it, or the variations of pearl clutching on crime. Right now, I take them in, I pay for it, and I deal with the crime. An introvert from Connecticut who's too young to buy a beer. You may pretend that the faulting is in the individual and that in that any way provides insight as to what we ought to do here. Parrying the question does not answer it, though what an excellent way this is to make it somebody else's problem. The problem of my friends and I who take the liberty of trucking into the woods and providing aid where the state fails to. And if it wasn't our problem, it would be the problem of police, investigators, and morticians. What an excellent use of the tax dollar such a strategy, or lack thereof, provides. This potato isn't very hot, which leaves me clueless as why it seems so adamant on falling into my lap. But again, problems aren't biodegradable. So whose problem is it going to be? I'd like to voice my support to the councilman here for these items. Thank you.
Could you give us your name
Oh, Chris Kulbeck,
and your address?
229 Main Street.
Okay, thank you very much. Someone else?
Oh, I guess it don't move. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having this this meeting and everybody showing up. And the heart is in the right place. But I ask, where does the heart belong when you're homeless? They say the heart, if heart is home, where is it? So the heart is in the community. And I can say this because I'm a person with lived experience with homelessness. And I feel like I have to breathe. And there was a time that I was addicted and I was homeless and I was struggling internally in silence. And I overcame those. I overcame those obstacles. And I found healing in working with others that are now experiencing hopelessness. I currently am a landlord and I provide housing. So I see both sides, and when you want to build or add an addition on and you want to be part of the solution and you come across zoning problems or requirements and the price of materials right now, sheesh. And I work a Granite State leader with the New Hampshire Housing Coalition, and I'm also a national coalition member. Sorry. And I had just had a few things that I've noticed from my experience that hasn't changed in Cheshire County over the past 15 years. So my question would be, where do people that are incarcerated at our Cheshire County Jail, where do they go when they're released? Is there a reentry program? Does anybody know that answer? Do you guys know the answer to that?
Yes, there is.
There is a reentry program for housing, to house people
Yes.
to move forward? Okay, awesome. I'd like to hear more about that sometime. What's that? Well, we also hold federal inmates in our county as well. And I think that working with my local shelter, we do our best. It's a transitional housing. It's the same place that I got my feet on my ground. And the time that I realized that we all have two lives, but you realize that your second one begins when you realize you have one. And so we try to take care of Jaffrey, Rindge area as much as possible. But the other issue is transportation in our county. People come to Keene because, hey, I got to make it to work. I don't have transportation. I need to, get to a medical appointment or, counseling or, any resource, just to have access to that resource. So I think transportation, more transitional housing, once you have a moment to breathe and kind of get yourself collected and then work through with somebody to get to where you need to be is a big part of the change. But I just wanted to come today to say, also homelessness is an experience, not an identity, nor should it be.
Could you give us your name and address, please, before you start? And if you'd give it, I'd appreciate it.
My name is Stacy Pickford Baez, and I live in Jaffrey, New Hampshire.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Joy Douglas Marshall Robertson. I live at 36 Ellis Court, Apartment 2. I'm a volunteer with Keene Mutual Aid. I've heard one of my friends' stories up here already. I've also heard that we're excited to spend time getting upstream. There are people drowning now. Tonight we have the opportunity to set an example for what a compassionate community can look like in New Hampshire. The proposal before the council, while far from being the solution to the structural problem of housing inaccessibility and income inequality, is a real effort to reduce harm to those facing the realities of extreme poverty. Realities that we cannot simply ignore and hope they disappear. In fact, a failure to enact a creative solution now will only cause the problem to grow in the future. Being houseless is not a crime, and it is not something that we in our community can afford to turn a blind eye to. We have heard over and again that shelters and multi-year waiting lists for means-tested housing are incompatible with dignified existence. Every year, the homeless population grows and shelters become more overburdened and resultantly more stringent in their regulations. People with children and pets struggle to access emergency resources and shelter beds, which are exceeded by the sheer number of people who do make the decision to utilize them. During the warmer months, shelters cut the amount of beds, and people who prefer to camp or have to camp stay in whatever areas they can find, sanctioned or not. This increases isolation from basic survival needs and services, as well as the safety risks from medical and substance use-related emergencies that were referenced earlier. There is currently nothing that can stop these things from being realities. But much like providing children a skate park and recreational activities, it combats those problems by creating spaces where people feel that they're actually part of the community, where they can actually exist. Where services can contact them in non-antagonistic ways, and so those same services don't have to spend so much energy and money chasing people across the city. The city can make areas off limits, but that won't stop desperate people from making desperate decisions. As we're witnessing a rise in evictions due to the economic crisis of COVID and inflation, more and more people will find themselves with no option but to find places to camp. The city can spend countless taxpayer dollars on policing off-limits areas every day to keep people away, or we can take the more humane, less expensive route of designating an area for camping and requiring that those people that use the space be its caretakers, coordinating with Parks and Recs, staff, and houseless outreach services in order to provide a safe environment for people to have basic needs met, while a more sustainable, actual solution is developed. I'd urge the City Council to accept the proposal, as it will be a net positive for our whole community as well as a positive example for the rest of the state. We can show that New Hampshire, that it pays to show compassion to the most vulnerable, and we can show that when we're working to support our communities from the bottom up, everyone can be lifted. Single parents, students, workers, and the elderly would all benefit from more public bathrooms and more affordable housing options. It will show those who visit our community that we are more than just window dressing of a small town built for tourism, but a real community of people who care about and support each other, no matter where they are economically. A place to live and not just to pass through. Please support this proposal.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Dave Chandler. My wife and I have been residents of Keene for over 13 years, and we now live in Langdon Place. And I want to thank Mr. Chairman, all you members of the council, you three folks, everybody here. It's wonderful to have this meeting. Thank you so much. But what I would like to do tonight is for just a few minutes, and I won't take long, but I want to address what you said in your first of 5 topics. And I recognized from what Mindy said and what Elizabeth Dragon has said, we have an immediate problem. These people are going to be turned out. We're going to have more people on our hands. The state, yes, we have a statewide issue, but we can't wait for the state to solve it. We've got to do something here in Keene now. And I have a specific proposal along the lines of what you, sir, said, and I'd like to review that with you now. I think what we should have is a set of criteria for adopting and establishing specific a specific program for helping the folks that are in immediate need or soon to be immediate need, people that don't want to live anywhere else but in the woods. And there are some people, I don't understand it, but they do. They don't want to come into one of the shelters. So we have to deal with those folks too. And here are my criteria that I'm going to suggest. And I would like a committee to form, as the other councilman said, to adopt something like this. But here's what I'm proposing. Put my glasses on so I can see what I'm saying. Okay, suggested criteria for finding an acceptable site for displaced tent people. That's what we're going to have is more, we already have them, displaced tent people. Okay, now that's not the whole problem, but that's one thing where we can start a pilot program on, like you were starting to talk about. Number one, it should be a location suitably apart from residential properties. Number two, it should be a site on property owned by the city of Keene. Number three, for safety and privacy, a wooded site or open level space near woods would be ideal. Number four, for safety and prevention of inappropriate behavior, and that's a TBD because some committee would have to define what that is, inappropriate behavior, rules and a program of city inspection, again TBD, should be put in place. This is why we can need committee action to fill out what these TBDs are, okay? And finally, number five, ability to gain access to critical services such as the community kitchen should be provided. And one solution might be, how about the Keene Express bus service? Maybe they could stop by and help to bring people to the 100 Nights, the community kitchen. By the way, I am a friend of the 100 Nights and a volunteer at the community kitchen. Okay, now, why don't we start a pilot program? And I have a specific location that meets all five of these criteria. You know where it is? You know the pickleball courts on Maple Avenue? How about that woods out behind the pickleball courts? There's a beautiful trail that goes into the woods there. There's level camping areas. There's trees. It's beautiful. It's away from residential areas. It's an ideal site to have a pilot program to help folks like we're talking about. So we need a committee to develop these TBDs and decide who's, what the rules are, who's going to do the inspections, what's the transportation system going to be like, but those are things that can be done. Why not have a pilot program in that area, city property? Yes, it is, of course. Right behind those pickleball courts. I was there just today, and it's an ideal site. So that's my suggestion. I'm going to turn over my list to you, sir. Maybe you can refer it to a committee. I'll be happy to serve on the committee if you want me to, because I'm a volunteer. Okay? Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Jim Duffy? Jim, I saw you back there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. James Duffy. I'm currently a resident of Winchester, New Hampshire, but I'm on the board of directors of 100 Night Shelter, a member of the guiding council of the Monadnock Interfaith Project, and I am a tenant in Keene. I pay rent for a studio. I don't live there, but I am still connected to the community. I just want to really acknowledge and honor this communication that brought this conversation to the forefront this evening from the three councils who did so. I think this is an issue we all know is very critical, and hopefully the energy and compassion and insight we all have and are showing this evening will move forward to a really constructive attempt to solve this problem. I do want to clarify one thing. There were remarks earlier by the city manager and also from Southwest Community Services and the city welfare, the city human services director, about the disproportionate amount of people from out of town who are staying or using the services of 100 Night Shelter. I just want to clarify for the record, in 2021, 14 towns in Cheshire County made significant financial contributions to 100 Night Shelter to help cover the cost of 100 Night Shelter caring for their guests and their residents. There is, on page 50 of the Keene Comprehensive Plan, a few paragraphs about the housing issues. Now, the comprehensive plan was adopted in 2010, addressing the issue of affordable housing, not specifically homelessness, but it was recognized that the lack of affordable housing is contributing to those problems, along with the problems of economic development and just having a place for people to live that they could afford. There was a recommendation made that a affordable workforce housing fund be explored and is discussed. I'm asking, Mr. Chair, through you or any city staff, was such an issue ever discussed? Was there ever a committee or a group that was formed to discuss that specific issue? And in addition, a recommendation on page 50 of the comprehensive plan was to convene community stakeholders to devise a specific strategy to address these issues. And again, we've heard tonight that the lack of affordable housing is one of the greatest drivers of homelessness. So I'm asking, was there ever a specific group formed since 2010 to address those issues specifically by the city? And if not, is it possible that such a group could be formed?
We're not sure, but we'll have somebody check to see if early on in the 2010, 2013 timeframe that it might have been addressed, but my memory is not very good at that.
Mine
So
either,
we'll take a look.
Mr. Chair, thank you.
Be more than happy to let you know. And certainly, that approach is very much part of what's been discussed this evening and suggested that we help to work towards affordable housing.
And I do know the Monadnock Interfaith Project, along with their work with local clergy, have been advocating for something like that as well, and have been in conversation with people on the county level. So I just wanted to mention that as well. I don't want to take any more, much more time, but I do want to give a brief editorial comment. I'm very attached to the comprehensive plan. I'm a former city councilor and worked on the committee to help draft that. There are three principles that the plan is based on that was identified in the Keene Community Goals as far back as 2003. That has to do with what's called the 3 E's. Environmental integrity, economic opportunity, and social equity. I think what we're seeing here tonight falls under the category of all three, but especially social equity. And it's something that I think is good for all of us in the community, especially decision makers, to keep in mind as we go forward, especially on issues like this. And also, I want to just, again, congratulate the three councilors who put this forward. It speaks also to a need that was suggested in the 2000 plan, and that's to develop a comprehensive implementation strategy. And that involves engaging the community, really maximizing the benefits of participatory democracy, and will be sure to benefit every citizen, especially the ones who we're hearing are in most need this evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Sir, young lady right next to you there, I think was before you. All right.
All right, I'm sorry. Hi, I'm Roy Ginsberg. I'm a resident of Keene, and I'm the vice chair of the Monadnock Interfaith Project. MIP is composed of houses of worship, clergy, and lay people, and is very interested in long-term systemic change. I am retired, and I spent my career as a social worker. I worked with and developed relationships with people that faced many challenges, including significant mental health challenges. Some of them had hurt others and made serious mistakes. We are all people. We work over many years. My work over many years have deepened my belief that all people deserve dignity, safe housing, and support. I applaud you as Keene leaders for taking a serious look at the alternatives and ways that people can have a place to live that is legal and safe. The letter written by Councilors Bobby Williams, Catherine Workman, and Brian Lake is very thoughtful. The letter has included possible short-term solutions such as establishing locations around the city to be designated as appropriate camping, establishing a safe parking program where people living in their vehicles would be allowed to park and sleep overnight in a relative security. The letter also addresses longer-term solutions to make room for lower-cost housing solutions such as tiny houses, cottage communities, and conversion of existing spaces into accessory dwelling units. As many of you know, Monadnock Interfaith Project is advocating for an affordable housing trust fund for the Cheshire County level that would address and that could help these longer-term solutions. As we've seen, the private market does not yield affordable housing for very low-income people. It takes public investment to finance affordable housing units for people with very low income in the long term. The first meeting of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund work group is next week. It will meet for 6 sessions and hopes to have concrete proposal to bring to Cheshire County decision makers by early summer. Councilor Brian Lake will be serving on this work group, and we thank him. We are grateful that the city is part of this process. We wonder if there are properties that are vacant or underutilized that we could be looking at in the short term as developing the places for people to live. If we brainstorm 30 possibilities, perhaps 1 or 2 could come through. But overall, we encourage you to seriously consider these different proposals and funding them. We applaud you for your courage and compassion in bringing this letter forward, and MIP supports having a place for all people to land. It's the right thing to do. If MIP can help in any way, we are happy to. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Hi, Susan Hay, Keene, New Hampshire, 22 Middle Street. First of all, thank you for referring to me as the young lady waiting to come up and speak. I haven't had that title thrown around in a while. A couple of things. Yes, Elizabeth, I understand. I've been in the situation of looking at, the steady stream of demands that you don't know how to meet and that the broken system above you. I have a lot of faith in this community's ability to transcend that trap and figure out, as someone said before me, how to be a leader on this issue. I have watched this issue for the last decade. I was part of starting the breakfast program at the Unitarian Church because I looked out my window and saw that people were on the library steps at 7 o'clock in the morning because they had to leave the shelter and it was cold, and that was the next building that was going to open up where they could go in. So I have watched this problem grow. With all good intent, this city is working on it and playing whack-a-mole and trying to do it. It's not enough. We are going to have to figure out if we're going to live into the kind of compassionate vibrant town and area, because this is a Monadnock region problem that we want, we need much more creative thinking. And we need bigger inspiration and bigger intent, around this. I take issue with the idea that people that are currently living in the woods, that is a lifestyle choice. I don't like camping, but I would probably choose camping over living in a shelter or being in the street, the hotel on West Street. Those are chaotic, often dangerous situations, and for people that are suffering from mental illness or from PTSD or other issues, it isn't that they want to live in the woods. It's that is more viable to them than living in a shelter or living in that hotel complex. And so if we're going to meet them where we are, and we don't yet have a solution for that segment of the population that for whatever reason cannot live in a shelter, if we really want to meet them where we are, they are going to be outside. And we can't say, well, we can, we are, but I don't think it's effective to say that we are only looking to house them right now. The immediate problem, the immediate pain for some of those people is they need to be outside. They cannot accept our solution. And this committee has come up with some interesting ideas on how to reduce harm. That is how I read your intent here. You aren't trying to solve the problem, because that is bigger than what these folks are asking. They are saying we can be more compassionate, we can meet them where they are, and without significant risk, there's always risk, but without undue risk, we can provide services around the support. So I love the recommendations that you guys have come up with. I don't know which ones are the most viable, but for God's sakes, we have been talking about bathrooms downtown in Keene for a decade. It is shameful that we have not figured out how to do that. Yes, to the gentleman that said we need a dumpster. Of course, if people are going to be out there, if they're going to be in Wheelock Park, there needs to be a dumpster. And that isn't heavy lifting. I understand there is all kinds of, with all due respect to our city attorney, he's probably going, oh my God, the risk here is, out the wazoo. The risk is here, no matter what we do. And we have people, so if we can make progress on those solutions, and those reduction of harm things, I think that same group of people, and I know the Monadnock Interfaith Council is working really hard on larger creative solutions. I have such faith in this community's ability to do it. But it starts by saying, we are not doing it now. We are not. No matter how much good intent we may have, we are not doing this. And we can say, and it is true, that this is a problem all over the country. We have disgusting income inequality. We have a safety net that has been absolutely torn apart. So what are we going to do? This is where we live. This is our town. What are we going to do? Thank you for your ideas.
Thank you.
Hello. Shorty. My name is Jody Noel, and I live at 32 Leverett Street. I'm here to express my gratitude to the council members for bringing this proposal to the council, and also my wholehearted support. While some of you may know that I work at a homeless shelter, you may not know that the shelter was founded by my grandma Dorothy, mother to 5 rowdy boys, editor at the Patriot Ledger, and preacher's wife. She was pretty busy. My grandmother saw a need in her community for support for single mothers experiencing homelessness, and she set her mind to using whatever resources she could gather in order to meet that need. In the early days, it was simply a home chair. It was people who went to her church who had an extra room, who allowed a pregnant woman or someone to stay in her thing. And then later on, the church with extra rooms. Simply put, she used whatever she had to meet a need that was unmet by the safety net at that time. Now, I love my job, and most days are extremely fulfilling. But there are days that break my heart because I receive phone calls from folks who can't find shelter by traditional means. They simply don't fall neatly into the boxes we've designated to qualify for shelter or housing. More and more people are struggling these days, and our system must adjust. But in the meantime, we as a community must gather whatever resources we can to meet the needs of all of our neighbors. In this proposal, there are immediate and long-term suggestions. To the former, we absolutely must do what we can to facilitate the safety and security of those unhoused individuals who cannot or will not enter shelter. It's not for us to judge their motivations or assign morality to their position, but to truly meet them where they are at and demonstrate compassion, respect, and a recognition of their innate dignity. We can and we should provide safe areas for those camping and sleeping in their cars. Public services like bathrooms, trash receptacles, and access to showers is the very baseline of that recognition of dignity. This is low cost, immediately actionable, and will help mitigate concerns and facilitate self-improvement. Beyond that, we need to tackle the broader issue of affordable housing. Fortunately, we have tons of examples across the country of creative ways to provide housing for all. I wholeheartedly support the suggestions of accessory dwelling units and the like, and Monadnock Interfaith Project's Housing Trust Initiative, and look forward to anticipate a comprehensive study of these and other innovative programs that we can implement in Keene. In that spirit, I so much aspire to embody that of my Grandma Dot. I ask that we first and foremost use whatever resources we have to provide public space in the immediate for our unhoused neighbors. That is my urgent request today. And beyond that, I hope we can come together as a community to implement creative ways to create a truly affordable housing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Thompson. Before I give you my address, do I look homeless to you? Just a quick question. No? Well, here we go. I don't have an address. I live in a tent. And I am homeless. But I'm not going to tell you where because I don't want to have people come up to you like, you got to go. Where am I going to go? I don't know. I try to figure that out every day. And right now, I got a girlfriend who's out there, head congestion, all that stuff. And, like, besides that, like, the trash is an issue. I see it every day. And I myself, it's overwhelming because I do my best to pick it up and put it where it goes, and I try to pass it on to other people. It's like, look, you carry it in, carry it out. And there's people out there that just don't have any care or respect for themselves or anybody else around them. And for me, it's a reoccurring headache. But, like, I agree with what this gentleman said right here and this guy. But, like, bathrooms, I remember, I'm 37 years old. I've been a resident of this town since I was born. And back when I was younger, I remember the bus station down on Gilbo Ave. They used to have bathrooms, but that got done away with because of vandalism and God knows what else. And most of the time, people are left with going to the drop-in, our 100 Nights Resource Center. The homeless community call it the drop-in. To use the bathroom there, and 9 times out of 10, there's always somebody in it. Or stuck going down to Cumbies to use the bathroom, and 9 times out of 10, there's always somebody in there taking forever. But, like, I agree with the trash. Like, have a designated dumpster for people that have physical issues with walking or anything like that, because there's a lot of people I know. The only reason why that they live so close to town is because they have physical illnesses of walking and everything like that. And I'm not just speaking for myself. I'm speaking for all the other homeless people that were too scared to come here. I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. I am too broken to work, but I'm not broken enough to be on Social Security or disability. So I'm stuck. It's a catch-22. I don't know what the heck I'm going to do every day. So I go out and I do my best to clean up all the trash that's been left behind by every other homeless person. And it's it's extremely overwhelming. I mean, it looks like Hurricane Katrina came through, stopped by to say hi, and left the debris of days worth or months worth of trash. And one person can't just do it all by themselves. It's backbreaking work. I mean, I've gone to welfare for food stamps and other kinds of assistance, and what they see me as an able-bodied person that I can get up and go work. I can't. What they don't see to their naked eye, I have the beginning progressive stages of Parkinson's disease. I shake uncontrollably, and to some employers, that's a liability. Years ago, I almost took out my girlfriend with a hot frying pan, this far away from her face. I bawled. I cried my eyes out. It scared the crap out of me. I got a blown knee, messed up foot. I got a permanently broken collarbone. I have mental illnesses. Like right now, I'm terrified of being here because I'm talking to a bunch of people I don't know. And I'm a reformed alcoholic. I'm actually now getting away from a drug addiction, cold turkey. I won't do rehab because I've seen what that does. I've seen people go to rehab, they just come back right out and go right back doing to the thing that they went to rehab for. I just won't do it. And like bathrooms right now, I could kill, not literally, but metaphorically, whatever, for a hot shower. I've been wearing the same clothes for 2 months. And like, don't get me wrong, the drop-in resource center, they do get donations of clothes, but sometimes I could fit myself and maybe one other person in them. And it's hard. Like, it's really hard. But like the whole designated camping area thing, it's an awesome idea. Like I said, I agree with this gentleman right here. And for some, the reason, like I said before, there's nothing prepared. I'm winging it. For some, they're homeless because of alcohol issues, drug addictions, financial issues. Like right now, for some people that are homeless, they get told, well, go back to your parents. I can't. My parents are 60-something years old, and they're homeless. They shouldn't be, but they are. Along with my sister and my 2 nephews. They're all grouped together inside of a church right now in Swansea. My parents got a hold of me, and they're like, what do we do? I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, we're homeless. We've never been homeless. You have. I'm like, yeah, but it's not for everyone. I've been homeless off and on since I was 16 years old. At first, it was like, great, I get to go camping. 37 now, I don't want to camp for the rest of my life. I don't even like being homeless now. But like, I have anxiety issues. I'm terrified of talking to people I don't know. I mean, there's been a couple people in the audience here from Homeless Outreach that have come out to talk to us one-on-one. I applaud you two for trying to reach out to some of the homeless community who are terrified of coming out from the woods or wherever to actually seek help and whatever else. But that's all I got to say.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Reverend Michael Hall, resident of Keene, number 9 Kennedy Drive, and minister to the Unitarian Universalist Church just up the road. In nearly 2 centuries as a congregation, we've been willing and able to do good for those who struggle in their lives due to poverty, lack of shelter, and food insecurity. We don't do this for notoriety or a place in heaven, but because, as the Reverend Joseph Tuckerman, a Unitarian minister often called the father of American social work, said, there is no human being, however apparently lost, that is beyond hope, whose condition is yet to be considered as utterly hopeless. No one, therefore, is to be given up, abandoned, cast off, as a sinner or whatever may be his hardihood and his desperation. The truth is that we are not alone in the work and have never been. The congregation I serve here in Keene has always found willing partners from other congregational communities, Congregationalists, Catholic, Jewish, Episcopalian, Baptist, Covenant, and Adventists among them. We have begun efforts that led to the first charitable home for poor women down on the corner of Grant and Beaver Street, to food pantries, shelter overflow spaces, and the Manna Fund. Programs that evolved into the community kitchen were started by local churches, and the community breakfast program, of which Susan just spoke about, Susan Hay just spoke about, was begun in our church parish hall. Tonight, I want to also speak on behalf of the people of the Monadnock Interfaith Project, people of goodwill and loving heart from many congregations and faith communities in this city, indeed the region, to applaud the recent work of the governor and the council and many others, I am certain, to help find overflow housing beyond capacity of our shelters, who helped pave the way for a new facility for the 100 Night Shelter, who are doing incredibly important work to help envision a way to an affordable housing trust fund, and especially as the need is particularly acute, the 3 city councilors who have put forward a call for accommodation to those who elect to live outdoors in tents for reasons as numerous as the people themselves. I will say that I have some background beyond ministry. I worked at the dual diagnosis wing of a detox as a case manager, and I find that I hear the same types of tropes in different places saying the same thing that is a little bit true and a little bit harsh, right? You know, I think that sometimes when people say we got to take care of the problem upriver, I have to say that's what you're blaming it on to begin with. People aren't coming from the cities to live in Keene because they heard they've got a better place to tent. I just don't believe that. I think I don't believe it. Also, no one, is going to leave their palatial estate in Miami to come be homeless at 100 Night Shelter. They've got a need that needs to be filled. Sometimes, of course, we allow our prisons, houses of corrections just to empty up, and the people go where they will. And right now, the people are suffering because there's no vision. This plan that these 3 councilors have set out, I think, is a remarkably important emergency set of measures to deal with the right now. We got to figure out how together, and you've got partners in the council, you've got partners in the community, to figure out a way together that we don't have to always rely on emergency shelters. Because when you do an emergency planning, you're leading with your heart, yes. You're finding available resources, good, but often you're not dealing with that problem. That's where I agree with you, Ms. Dragon. So those things I think are true, and as well, there's so many other stereotypes of people without housing here in this community that I've heard, and in all the communities I've lived. And someone had brought up to me about someone OD'd in a bathroom at a supermarket recently, and I asked, well, what if I'd gone in there? It would be a totally different story, because I have a home. I have a wife, I have children, I have cars and stuff. I got stuff, and I could still be an addict, and the story would be much more charitable. We know that this road ahead is rocky. The time when we move from stopgap measures to a clearly articulated vision still a ways off, that some will scoff. But that is always true, isn't it? You're not doing easy work, and there's a book that says, I forget the name of it, the poor will always be among you. But when you get asked, who is your brother's keeper, your sister's keeper, your sibling's keeper, I say I have to be. And I hope that we'll all say that too. We do it because it's right. We'll do it together. Sometimes it seems like we're scraping nickels and dimes together, but we can get there. And I want to close with these words by Leslie Jameson. Empathy isn't just something that happens to us, a meteor shower of synapses firing across the brain. It's also a choice we make to pay attention, to extend ourselves. Sometimes we care for another because we know we should or because it's asked for, but that does not make our caring hollow. That I can tell you as a minister, you don't need inspiration to help people out, and I hope that we can do this together. I really do. Thank you. Michael Hall, 920.
Thank you. So I think there are 3 pastors in a row there. So I'd like, please.
Good evening. My name is Derek Scalia of 16 Hillside Ave in Keene. I come to you tonight as a citizen, as a faith leader, and as a member of the Monadnock Interfaith Project. I also come tonight to offer my thanks to Councillor Lake, to Councillor Workman, to Councillor Williams. I recognize that these measures will not solve the issue that's at hand. And yet, these measures are rooted in compassion and love, which is often not talked about in government. I commend the councilors and the council at large for leaning into the work of love and providing for our neighbors. This is the ultimate calling that builds strong and vibrant communities. For too long, we've gotten into a tussle that the plight of those who are in need are caught in a bureaucratic struggle that leaves so many outside of the fold. The work that is before us will not be solved by one entity alone. It requires the community to come together, and we show that again and again on so many issues. The churches who have opened their doors to provide direct supports, to agencies who work tirelessly to provide for our neighbors in need, and the government to see them as neighbors, as fellow citizens. This is our work and our collective responsibility. I am deeply thankful for what you are doing, and I commend you to lean deeper into this work as we do address the systemic issues. But we must recognize that this is a both-and situation. We can't choose sides. We just must recognize our responsibility in the work. I look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pastor number 3. I am the Reverend Cindy Bagley. I'm the senior minister at the United Church of Christ here on Central Square. We've been serving the Keene community since 1738 and involved in this issue for a very, very long time. In fact, we were the original overflow shelter for years, and I just am really delighted to be here tonight and congratulate you on your letter and you on the work of the city. I've been in Keene now for 6 years, and it is an amazing community, and I share the comments about a sense of optimism and hopefulness. I don't look to you all, I'm sure, like a formerly homeless person, but I want to tell you there was a time in my life when I was this close. In my 30s, my husband committed the ultimate crime in the American healthcare system. He got sick. And he got sick with a chronic illness. And after 10 years of decline, watching our bank account dwindle, We had to put him into a nursing home, and we lost everything. And I'll never forget my 5-year-old son coming home from school and walking down the hill and saying, what is that sign on the front of the house, Mom? And I had not seen it, and it was a huge foreclosure sign. And that experience changed my life. We literally lost everything. Now, I was among the fortunate. I had one graduate degree at the time. My husband had not one but 2 law degrees. So for any of you that think that you're safe or that this issue doesn't apply to you, I'm here to tell you we are all much closer to the edge than we think we are. And so this issue is really powerful for me. I was fortunate. I had a place to go and bring my 3 young children, but it was temporary, and I had no idea how I was going to get my children back to Manchester where we lived so that they could resume school. Again, I was one of the lucky ones. I had a wonderful church and very gracious friends. But this story led me to ministry after a 20-year career in consulting and business. So I'm here to say that I'm so proud to be a part of the Monadnock Interfaith Project, to be working with my colleagues, and I want you all to know that there are literally hundreds of members of congregations out there who care desperately about this, and we will be an awesome partner for you in this work as we have been. So I encourage, we're all thinking, what are we all thinking about? We're all thinking about Ukraine, right? And you're going to go home and turn the TV on and see more misery that's happening. But you've got two agendas. You've got the people that are working and trying to negotiate peace, and you've got the people that are trying to answer the question, what do we do with the 10,000 refugees we have today? Again, both are virtuous efforts. We have an immediate problem, and we have a systemic problem. So let's do both. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Elsa Worth. I'm the priest at St. James Episcopal Church here on West Street and a resident of Keene and someone who has known and loved this community since I was born. I have been coming here long before I've worked here. And I've experienced this city as an extremely compassionate, forward-thinking, and civic-minded community. And nothing I've heard tonight changes my mind. And I am grateful for this letter that has come out from these 3 counselors who have shown an out-of-the-box vision. There's a lot going on in the 21st century that is asking us to rethink our priorities and to think outside the box in all kinds of organizations. Trust my colleagues and I, we know this in religious institutions. It's out-of-the-box time. And so it's really important for us to remember that it's not just the way we've always done it that gets things done. And I know that things often come down to budgets, and here we are talking to the Finance Committee. And it is true that there are limits to budgets, but it's also true that there's unlimited compassion in our community. And the people that really care, represented here by just a few of the thousands that are behind us, all we need is leadership. And that's why I'm so grateful for this letter, because it's showing that our leaders are willing to think outside the box. Our leaders are willing to stand up in controversial places that some people might disagree with. Our leaders are thinking it's worth a try to think about things new instead of saying, well, we tried that before, it'll never work. That doesn't get us anywhere. So I charge you tonight to be visionary leaders and to be outside of the box leaders and to be big-hearted, compassionate leaders, because our community has all kinds of citizens. Citizens who have plenty of power and citizens who have none at all. And they're all my neighbors. And I want to be in a town where we are known for our innovative and creative leadership. And I've seen it in so many ways in Keene. I will just name the business leadership during the pandemic. Come on. We're a special, creative place, and I'm grateful for your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dave Kirkpatrick. I sit on the board of Rights and Democracy Institute, New Hampshire and Vermont. I also have a business that's located on Marlborough Street here in Keene. And we've heard from a lot of folks who are really in the know and really connected to this tonight. I would just like to share some experience that I have that relates sort of directly to this. My first job in Keene here was working for a company called Access. It was an acronym. I couldn't tell you what they were pretty creative in coming up with that. It was right at the top of the square here. And what we did was helped people who were not fitting into the box find other ways to have success. I worked with a number of kids from Keene High to find ways to get them credits for things they were not able to do. I worked with kids and adults of various abilities and disabilities, and some they were born with and some they acquired, and just all kinds of people who have needs. And one of our tasks, one of the things that we absolutely would do is get people to move to cities. And so I hear some of this language about who came from where, and are they ours, are they our responsibility, can we find them a bed someplace else? And the folks I'm talking to, moving people out of places is not really a thing that should be done for a variety of reasons. But people would come to cities, and we would send them to cities because they need what is here. They need access to resources. So somebody who doesn't have the money for a car simply can't get along in a town like Hancock or Antrim or Hillsborough. Somebody who has other needs, can't get themselves around. Part of what we were trying to do is let people live their best life with dignity and be as autonomous as they possibly could. So somebody who lives in Concord can jump on the bus. They can get to the grocery store. They can get to their therapist. They can go to do entertainment. They can have a number of friends there and this sort of thing. So I agree very much with Elizabeth that the problem starts at the state, and then there's a great global problem that we need to fix to deal with that. Happy to do some of that work, and I and the folks that I work with, we're definitely looking at the state, and that is a long-term solution. But I really do think it is the role of cities that we're going to have burdens that other places don't have. I'm sure my town has cow tipping and poaching and people shooting guns that they're in greater proportion than over here. But that's just the thing is this is something that is not going to change. People who need services and who need more accessible, readily available services are going to come to cities. The solution would be more like addressing that, getting the funding here so we can take care of the people where they are, because they're going to keep coming in this direction. And again, they're people, they're citizens. That's us. It's all of us, and it's our problem. And thank you for your time.
Do we have somebody else? Okay.
Good evening to the Keene community. My name is Sparkle Woodward, and I've been in Keene for about 4 years now and have witnessed a lot of change as we've entered a global pandemic. Demand for housing has increased, and with demand, there needs to be a supply. We are stuck in a slump where demand continues to increase, as does the cost of living. Meanwhile, in New Hampshire, minimum wage continues to stay at $7.25. At 40 hours a week, that is just over $1,000 before taxes. Now take a look at the cost of apartments in Keene. In some cases, even a single-bedroom apartment can cost well over $1,000 per month. This is not factoring in food, laundry, travel, and other expenses. This is causing individuals to become homeless. I faced financial hardship due to the loss of Domino's when there was the fire, and I was almost without a position in the city of Keene. And I had fear for becoming homeless, as I couldn't pay for my home. Seeing from a perspective around the city of Keene, I see there is a need for additional support for the homeless. Even those with little or no belongings. You need to be able to eat. You need to be able to use the bathroom. And now where does that trash go, you may ask? Currently, the City of Keene does not have an easy solution for the public to dispose of that trash or to use the restroom outside of business hours. For some businesses, the business hours are short. In the case of some businesses on Main Street, Chaos and Kindness included, for example, it can be as late as 5 p.m. being the earliest that you can go and use the restroom. Now, what if someone needs to use the restroom after that? Where are they going to put their dollar menu wrappers? Keene has become my home, and I would love to keep it a very special place. By allowing for use of public restrooms and providing a disposal system for the homeless, the city can remain clean and beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we've heard a common theme, a lot of great information, and it's time for this group up here to have a discussion and figure out our next step. And I think it'll include a number of different organizations and a number of folks. And we'll gather this together and we'll move something along this evening. We don't have an answer. Sure. We have one more person who wants to speak with us. And then we'll talk about our ongoing plan to resolve some of the issues that are before us immediately.
Thank you. I'll be brief, I promise. Kudos and so many thanks to Councilors Williams, Workman, and Lake. Thank you so much for bringing forward the issues of housing and homelessness. I have to say I'm very grateful that I have twice been helped in my life with housing issues. The first time was back in the 80s when I became a single parent and was fortunate enough to get into Keene Housing's Cheshire Homes. While I was on the waiting list for that, I lost my electricity, you know, so I was pretty close if I hadn't gotten in there. And I honestly don't know where my daughter and I would be today if we hadn't had that opportunity. The welfare system has been broken since then. At one point, she got sick. I was working. She got very sick, and I had spent my grocery money for the week. So I went to the welfare office and asked if I could have temporary food stamps, $5 or $10, so that I could buy juice, soup, and Jell-O. They said, "We can't help you, but if you quit your job, you'll get welfare, you'll have your rent paid, you'll have your insurance." Really? I mean, that's like $5 or $10 versus, you know, getting me stuck in that system. And then I hear about people being put up in hotel rooms. Let's try and find something a little more proactive. Currently, I am helped by living in HUD-subsidized elderly housing. I'm a retired English teacher on Social Security. I was embarrassed to ask for help when I had to apply for Cheshire Homes. I'm not embarrassed that I'm in subsidized elderly housing. I think it's a crime that it has to be that way. I could not afford the market rents. So thank you very much. I want to say I've been working with Monadnock Interfaith Council trying to move forward. I look forward to being with Councilor Lake on the task force. And I'm happy to help look at some of these suggestions. I think you've had some great ideas brought forward. I think we have a lot of empty buildings in the area, and we need to think outside the box and maybe just have some emergency zoning changes made. The problem is here, and it's not going away, and I thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you. Want to take a break? Or you wanna keep going? Keep going. All right. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my clarifying question. What you guys were looking for a recommendation of this is a little different than the recommendation that we had. You guys were interested in going to the Human Rights Committee potentially as an option, as it's a city committee. Is that?
Yeah, I think that was the idea for us to actually act on some of these things, and this was alluded to by a couple of the people that spoke, is that we need to flesh out a couple of these ideas a little bit more. And so the way to do that would be to have a city committee work potentially in tandem with the coalitions that already exist to carrying these out. So the idea would be to send this to HRC and have them act on these things.
So yeah, my actual question then is, what are your thoughts on the use of HRC?
It's a good question. I don't know if that's the correct committee to send it to. I don't know. I honestly don't know if that's the right committee. I think that I would like to talk to our Park and Rec director, who is the staff liaison for that committee and manages the work of that committee, and understand the membership of that committee and what their tasks are now, and then look at whether or not there's another committee that the city might have that might be more suited for it. I don't know off the top of my head.
Would you be open to the idea of having it referred to a city committee at the discretion of, like, so we could have that time with staff to figure it out, so that we could punt it on more time and figure out, have you guys have the time to do that? Or we could give the direction to put it on to a committee. I don't know if that's.
I guess just to piggyback on that, I would even go a little bit further and ask if this maybe needs its own ad hoc committee. It's clear that there's a lot of passion around this issue, and it's clear that it's not a simple issue. It's very complex. So my opinion is that this should go to its own ad hoc committee as opposed to us trying to find another committee to stick it on.
So the only, one of the downfalls of that, either of those thoughts is that it's going to take time to get that pulled together. I think one of the thoughts here, one of the possibilities we have in front of us is to refer it back to the manager with a charge to get this thing moving and start examining a number of things at the same time. It'll keep coming back to this committee. If we were to have an ad hoc committee appointed, we got to go through the council process. We're actually on one of those off months. There'll be a couple of weeks before anything gets going. In the meantime, so many things could be done based on the information that's been brought in. So that's just an idea. And then if it went to the Human Rights Commission, again, they got to get a charge, and it's probably a little bit outside the action side of the house. I mean, they'll bring together great information and great ideas, but they don't have an action charge there. They can't implement a lot where the city council here can't implement. So those are just some thoughts. We're not going to solve it yet here to make a direction. We get some time to talk about it tonight before we leave here.
So I think the idea with having it be in the HRC is they're able to at least make recommendations to the city council to act on, correct? Specifically for HRC, is that the?
I'm not sure. I mean, I didn't know that was going to be the recommended committee, and so I didn't really look at it for that reason. But we can look at that. We can definitely look at their charge, their membership, their role, what their role is with the city council, and see if that works. But there are other options. There, like Councilor Powers was saying, it could be, and Councilor Madison was saying, it could be a separate committee that's created. If it's a committee that's created through the council process, there's a whole process of getting a minute taker and a location and all those things that do take time. It goes back and forth. There's also the option of just creating, I can create a committee as well. That's just a offshoot for a specific purpose. and then the mayor creates committees. So we have multiple options to pursue. So I would like to think about that a little bit.
So I think Councilor Remy's idea would allow for some of that time.
Yep.
Does that seem fair, that leaving it at the discretion of the city manager? Is that the idea? For which committee it would go to, whether it's ends up being an ad hoc, or if it's HRC, or if it's another one of the committees that we have.
Do you think the recommended motion encompasses that?
No, it doesn't. And to be honest, if you really do want to help expedite this, giving it to the city manager to create what she thinks is necessary for this purpose. And because otherwise, as she pointed out, you're under 91A, and, once that happens, it becomes a much more formalized process and harder to work through.
So we got a motion. Are we all in agreement here? Any other ideas that we want to put forward to? Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. In regards to the motion, I think what you could do is take what you have and add the additional language about sending this issue to a committee to be determined by the city manager, and something along that line. So, because I do still think the work that we were talking about at the state level, at the regional level, working through the welfare system reform, those things are still important. And as many people said tonight, it's both. And if we add that additional language to the motion, then we're moving in both directions.
Can you add that to your?
Yeah.
Because you're next up.
Of course.
You know,
So
you can get a lottery ticket tonight too.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of how we want to word this specifically.
I can take a stab if you want. It's up to you.
Sure, yeah.
Go ahead.
All right.
Volunteers.
Volunteer. Move that the city manager be directed to continue working with the Greater Keene Homelessness Coalition to complete the community mapping process on homelessness prevention and coordinated local responses to homelessness. This report will be submitted to the Governor's Council on Housing Stability, and further that she work with the state and service providers in our region on implementation of recommendations contained within that final report, and that the letter brought forth by the councilors be directed to a committee at the city manager's discretion.
We have a second to that?
Second.
Okay. Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? No one opposed, unanimous. Thank you for being part of this, this letter, city councilors, and thanks for all who showed up tonight to discuss this. And as we move through it, please give your input to folks. Thank you.
We good?
Yeah, we're adjourned.
All right.
I don't think you have to say you're adjourned anymore.
I don't know.